Okay, if you're just joining us, welcome. We're really glad you're here. We encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're calling in from. Let's see, it's 1 minute past the hour. We still have a lot of people coming in, so since we have some trouble managing the waiting room and talking at the same time, we'll probably give it another minute or so. 111 people. Wow, so many. Well,
Hello, this is Dr. Griffin. Can you hear me now?
Yes, but we're going to mute everyone.
so we'll open up for some Q&A at the end, so you'll have a chance. Okay, we are, I think, going to get started. We still have people coming in, but I think maybe you could man the waiting room
Yes,
while I get
I
us
think
started.
you've got the early bets.
Yeah, exactly. So, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Brumfield. I'm here today with Ben, my partner at FromThePage, and we wanted to talk about our brand new integration with Gemini 3 today. And I know because there's so many of you here that this is something that we're all really interested in, maybe excited about, maybe worried about, all of those things at the same time. Go to the next slide. So it's 7 a.m. on Saturday, November 15th, and I'm having a quiet morning reading, drinking my coffee, and Ben sends me a link to this newsletter by Mark Humphrey. He's a historian and an AI researcher at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada, and it's about a new model that Google is testing that seems to be good at handwriting. And Ben's comment was, this would be worth trying out once it's released. Now, I'm not sure how closely Ben actually read this newsletter, because once I read it, my first reaction was, shit, right? And then about 5 minutes later, after angsting for a while, I turned to him and I was like, we should just build this in now. Next slide. So why now? Why Gemini 3? Why, since we've been preaching caution and guarding against seductive plausibility with LLMs for the past like 18 months, did we suddenly decide, and really in the space of about 5 minutes, to include this in FromThePage? I think it's because we've been thinking so critically about AI transcription that we were able, due to Mark Humphrey's really excellent early testing and analysis — you should definitely go read that newsletter and we'll include that in our follow-up email — to identify this particular model as a sea change in AI transcription. Next slide. First, it's good, right? Mark's first analysis, admittedly only using 1,000 words because he was jumping through some major hoops to get Google AI Studio to present him with their model in testing, was that once you took out capitalization and punctuation marks, this new model was only getting 1 in 200 characters wrong. That's good. Next slide. So it's not just good, it's very good. So when Mark gets early access to Gemini 3, he runs his full HTR test corpus using this new model, and he declares that for handwritten text recognition, the model meets the standard for expert human performance. But that's not all about how good it is. It's not all about how good it is, right? We've been troubled by and have avoided shipping anything in FromThePage that would encourage transcribers or institutions to embrace seductively plausible AI drafts, incorrect but plausible text generated by LLMs. Next page, next slide. So in that same analysis, Mark says hallucinations were entirely absent. Let me repeat that again. Hallucinations were entirely absent. This is something that we have been seeing in a lot of our testing, and this is why we have avoided using LLMs in FromThePage, is because ChatGPT in particular was more than happy to make things up, and they looked very plausible.
More plausible than the originals in a lot of cases.
Yeah. The other thing that Mark observed is that Gemini manages to avoid correcting spelling and capitalization errors, in the sense that changing historical standards, or just non-standards, because people were not quite as literate, to our modern standards for capitalization and punctuation. So those two things, not hallucinating and working very hard to adhere to the actual text on the page, that was pretty compelling. So next slide. So this is a slide I pulled from a presentation we did
2 years ago?
yeah, 2 years ago when we were working on our Transcribus integration and trying to figure out in FromThePage, what do we want AI to look like? Can we talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so, we've came up with these principles for AI, right? We want AI to be optional instead of required, right? Nobody wants AI shoved down their throat. We believe in humans at the center of the transcription process. So we want AI to be something that can help someone if they want that help, if they trust that help, but something that they can completely ignore and don't even need to see. So we don't want to either force institutions who run on FromThePage to use AI, or even if institutions have turned on AI for their collections, we don't want volunteers and transcribers to have to use the AI. So optional instead of required. We want the existence of AI processes to be transparent instead of invisible. If you're looking at something that an AI has touched, we want you to know that that's the case, right? We don't want to show something to someone that has been, transcribed by a human, which was actually transcribed by an AI, right? And finally, we want any kind of AI result to feel tentative instead of feeling authoritative, right? There's a number of ways you can kind of look at doing that, but these three principles have kind of guided our decision making on all of this.
Right. So the question was, could we use Gemini in a way that was optional, transparent, and tentative? Could we uphold the principles that we had? And so here's what we did. Next slide. We added an entirely new AI tab to our page view in FromThePage. We think this is a very transparent way to differentiate a transcription by an AI to one by a human. This particular transcription is generated by Gemini 3. This is, Ann Hinson is on, she's from the University of South Dakota. It's one of their collections. And it's a really interesting example because this is an inventor and kind of an advertising guy, and his texts are full of strike-throughs and underlines, and it's interesting to see what Gemini did with that. And we'll go into some of the prompting that I used a little bit later, but you can kind of see what it does. It uses tildes for strike-throughs, and I thought the dots here, like next to won't, was really interesting because that's the hole in the paper for the 3-ring binder. So it's very, it adheres to the text very closely.
Yeah, so these are impressive results, but we don't want to present them as if they were the human transcript. These are often a separate AI tab.
Right, and we do, you notice at the top, there's this blue flag that says, hey, if you want to edit this text, do that over in this other tab. Okay, the next thing we did, next slide, is in our transcription screen, we added, actually we've had for a while, if you use our Transcribus integration, this AI draft button. You click the button and we pull into the editor the text, in this case, from Gemini 3. We add a flag at the top that says, hey, this was generated by artificial intelligence. There might be errors, so please look at it. And then we also ask people to delete that warning.
And those of you who have used our Transcribus integration in the past will notice that we've actually changed the wording here. Previously this said AI text. Now we want to make it abundantly clear that this is just to be used as a draft, right? So we renamed this as AI draft.
Right. And it's optional, right? Transcribers don't have to use it. So both of these features that I'm showing were available and were started to be tested by some of FromThePage's customers when Gemini 3 released on Tuesday, November 18th. Point out that's just 5 days from when Ben sent me Mark's newsletter. I'm super proud of our team for turning this around so incredibly fast. And it kind of shows you how important we think it is, right? Okay, so let's keep going. So Mark Humphrey is not the only person talking about Gemini 3 and kind of our world here, right? So Dan Cohen on November 25th. So Dan Cohen's the Dean of Libraries at Northeastern University, and he writes about his experience using Gemini 3 for transcription. And he really focuses, next slide, on reasoning that Gemini shows as it analyzes the handwriting in a historic manuscript. He actually pulls in a manuscript that he used for his dissertation, and kind of this is just a screenshot from his newsletter. But next slide. Dan's observation is that the reasoning is a verbalization of what you're taught to do in a paleography class. And that's kind of fascinating, isn't it, right? It's what we would all be doing during transcription if we were really, diligent and good and methodical about it. And the machine is. And it actually, I think it's interesting that Gemini is the model that seems to be doing this so well. My personal theory is that all the paleography classes are on YouTube, and that's part of Gemini's training data. But that's a theory. I don't think I can't prove that at all. Next slide. So I had earlier discussions over email with Lydia Nyworth at Library of Virginia. We talk about AI stuff in our world, and she had sent me Mark Humphrey's original post, and she's like, the reasoning traces are remarkable. They feel really similar to conversations that our staff have had with human transcribers. So I think that's, I don't know, it's reassuring. We always, there's some research out there that shows that these reasoning traces sometimes may not actually be true, right? They could be things that LLM is making up. But I'm going to show you some examples in a minute where I don't actually think that's the case. So, but let's keep going. So we built in reasoning. We added that reasoning as a block in that same AI tab for a page. We put it at the bottom because it tends to be really, really long. And our goal here was more transparency, right? How is the AI thinking about this? Maybe, right? What are the steps it's going through? My next slide, I'm going to talk about this. So we just ran across this one when we were showing off this reasoning to some people, and I thought it was hilarious. So on the far right, there is a bit of text that came from a page. And it's hilarious because Gemini 3 goes through and is tries to read this word. I'm going to read you one of the sentences. It's the first sentence on this screenshot. It's actually about halfway down the reasoning. I'm revisiting the month as it is the key to the date. While June seems likely due to the initial J in following strokes, I'm now certain it is rhino. And then it's it doesn't just do that once. I Control F to show all the rhinos in this screenshot. It's keeps thinking, rhino. Surely the date is rhino. I don't know. It does eventually get it right in the end. It decides it is June. And you can see from the screenshot, it's a really hard word to read.
It could be an R,
yeah.
Right?
I kind of think it could be a Q too. But anyhow, so I thought this was a moment of levity in our technical discussion here.
So one question everyone often has is, how do these things compare against humans? We can't give a general answer to that other than saying it's good, but what we wanted to do was provide people with the toolkits to decide how well this model does against humans. So the first thing that we did was we added a comparison feature to that AI tab. So if a page has human-created transcription that is completed, right? So a page has been transcribed by a human, and that could be a human who used the AI draft feature and corrected it. It could be somebody who transcribed from scratch, or in a lot of cases, what we are doing is we are taking previously transcribed collections and running Gemini against them to kind of do these measurements. Right? So,
on request.
On request. So if a page has been transcribed by a human, we can take a look at the differences. And so we want to be able to visualize that on that AI tab. So what you can see here, the ground truth is in green. The things that are in the AI draft, this is a difference view, are in red and cross through. Everything in white are cases where these two things agreed, right? So both systems agreed with everything in white. You can see it's pretty good, right? There aren't a lot of differences here.
A lot of them are capitalization and punctuation, which is what Mark found too.
Right, and you can see, here's a good example, the third point of this person's will, semicolon versus comma. Human got it right, Gemini got it wrong with the semicolon. I'm not sure, if I'm trying to do a full text search for Didama, well, I don't really care about that. If I'm trying to do a scholarly edition, I probably do. So we do see more complex differences in places where the diff visualization has trouble. When the AI is trying to do markup, indicating said Hayden, for example, is, it's inserted with a caret. It does it one way, it's not in our original transcription. So, that's kind of a difference of how it follows conventions versus how the human follows conventions, which is a challenge that we will return to in this presentation. So in addition to visualizing those differences, we also wanted to be able to calculate statistics. So we calculate two sets of statistics for differences in quality, comparing the human transcription against the AI draft. And one set of statistics includes things like that semicolon versus the comma. That's the verbatim comparison. And then the text-only comparison, before we do that comparison, we strip out all punctuation, we normalize white space, we normalize capitalization, and then generally what you can see for those is that the differences will be better. So we go from a character error rate of the verbatim transcription of 4.4 to one of 2.02. So, definitely you see a kind of a more meaningful difference there. Let's talk about those measurements of accuracy. So we provide three different heuristics. One is character error rate. This is essentially almost every key press that you would have to make to take an AI transcription and correct it to bring it in line with the ground truth. So every deletion of a character, every insertion of a character, every time you have to change a character, those all count. And then that is, you do a ratio dividing all those changes by the total number of characters in the ground truth. And in some cases, if the ground truth is very small and if the AI text is something totally different that's very long, you can have a character error rate of more than 100%, right? It's not quite a percentage, but it just, it's similar to one. Word error rate is similar. You do the same calculation, but you talk about how many words need to be changed, deleted, inserted, or replaced. Finally, non-stop word accuracy, I think, is really important, especially if we're talking about libraries and archives that are doing these kinds of projects to facilitate full text search. If we have two different systems that each have an identical character error rate, but one of them messes up the word "the" consistently while getting all the proper names correct, while the other one messes up proper names while getting all the "thes" correct, I definitely prefer the one that messed up the "thes" and the "ofs," right? So what we do to calculate non-stop word accuracy is that we remove all the stop words, right? These filler words like "of," "the," or "had," and then calculate the number of remaining words that are the same as the ground truth. Now, to get non-stop word accuracy, you do have to set the language of your collection, which can be done in collection settings. So we only support non-stop word accuracy for about the 30 most common languages. So it doesn't work for everything.
I'm also going to point out, we have done zero Gemini 3 testing with non-English languages. We have a couple of projects that are asking about it, and we totally want to do it. We haven't gotten to it yet because it's only been 2 weeks.
Yes.
So, right. So how good is good enough, right? This is now a question because we have these calculations. We've got this really good AI transcription. So I'm pulling, this is from another Mark Humphrey's newsletter. Actually, this is from the first one. So he talks about, non-professionals, and I don't know whether non-professionals are the same as dedicated crowdsourced transcribers, who we think do an awesome, amazing job. But non-professionals typically get a word error rate of 4 to 10%. professional transcription services guarantee a 1% word error rate, which is 2 to 3% character error rate, but only when the texts are really clear and readable. So that's the ceiling. That's as good as it's going to be. If you get a word error rate of 1% or even 4%, a 2 to 3% character error rate, you're probably never going to get any better, right? But then in his deep dive, go ahead to the next slide. He talks a little bit more about, what does this mean? And
what's interesting about this is he's talking about fitness for purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Will it work for what you need it to work for? So an error rate of 1% means what? 1 error per sentence? That's readable, but you probably want to edit it, right? 0.5%, the document's probably usable and trustworthy. I would say that's definitely good enough to put in an archival system for search. If you want to publish it, if you're a documentary edition, then you still would probably want to do copy editing. So it's useful to have this as a framework because I've never been quite clear on what's good enough. And so I love the fact that Mark defines this for us.
Yeah. I will say one of the interesting things that I've noticed we haven't done a systematic study, but I've noticed that non-stop word accuracy tends to be worse than word error rates coming from.
That makes sense, doesn't
it? Well, it makes sense. It's not what you'd like, but it makes sense because proper names and full nouns are a lot harder to read in a lot of cases. There's a lot more variation than there are in if and the.
Right. Yeah. So if you count if and the, then the machine is going to do a better job than if you take all of those out percentage wise. But I do think, and where we're thinking about, what's the role of humans? We talk about that a little bit later. It's those non-stop words. It's the proper names. It's the locations. Those are the things that require context. If you are from an area and all the last names that tend to be used, your first grade teacher had the same last name as the one you're trying to decipher on this page, then you are more likely to get it right. So that's one of the ways that we're thinking about where do humans have value and can contribute over the machine.
So let's talk about the kind of errors we have seen in Gemini. We want to talk about them qualitatively and quantitatively. So the biggest error that we have encountered so far was when we fed in this set of minutes from, I think, a city council meeting. And we found that Gemini's output simply truncated.
Every time. Like we tried this 3 different times.
Yes. The crazy thing about this is that, and we did try some of the suggestions that Mark Humphrey's recommended about changing the thinking level parameters and things like and media resolution parameters we're passing to Gemini, but like nothing seemed to work. The crazy thing about this is that the reasoning discusses people that the reasoning claims to be looking further down the page. You see people's names show up, you see other things show up.
I mean, they're doing a lot of accounting work in these meeting minutes, and it's talking about those details.
Yeah, you could see the combined dollar total of 4,232. Well, that's at the bottom of the page, which it didn't transcribe. We're not sure what's going on there.
And we don't know how to fix it.
We don't know how to fix it, right? The thing that I love about this, though, is that this is a very transparent error, right? It is clear something is wrong. It's clear what's wrong. It didn't do all the page.
Right. It didn't make up anything. Right?
Yeah, it did not make up anything. Right. In fact, what it did transcribe matches the ground truth perfectly, which is great.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, other errors. So I fed in this farm account book. So this is a project that I run with this is a 1855 entry tobacco plantation. And Gemini had a lot of trouble with this irregular letter form at the end, where there's this is what the diarist was using. He tends to write in pound, shilling, and pence, even well into the United States having been independent for 50 years. And so this is what he uses for his dollar signs. And Gemini transcribed that sentence perfectly, and did some really interesting calculations, but could not ever figure out, even given all the context, that this was not a FF, that this was in fact a $, right? Even though its reasoning tries, right? Trying to figure out what the FF is, right? And then it goes back to the numbers, and the FF remains a mystery. It keeps looking, right? I'm re-examining this, and I still can't figure out the FF. It is interesting that the reasoning claims that one of the things it's doing is looking at this person's rate of pay, $14 a month, and then looking at the actual entries, 1.5 days, 3 days, 2 days, and then looking at the total, right? If it's actually doing that, that's a really interesting way of doing reasoning, and way of doing reasoning during transcription. It's the sort of thing that you would hope a graduate student or a editorial assistant or a historian would do, is kind of check them out. Does this make sense? Okay, a more serious example from the same page was the word doctor shows up twice. And both times, this Gemini reads this as the proper name Dalton. Well, there is no Dalton. And I'm not sure what can be done about this, right? This is one of those examples of non-stop words where you have a proper name.
Except it's doctor, which is not even a proper name, right?
Yeah, you've got a title being confused with a proper name. This is a problem. I cannot call it a hallucination, however, right? It's not an overcorrection. It is a fair misreading that works both given context and given the letter forms we see here.
Right. A human could have made this same mistake. We also ran into this where we were running, this was a manuscript, and it has, I had the same screenshot here 3 times because I was kind of taking it for how FromThePage showed it. You see the vicissitudes of life, and then there's this thing that has been like crossed out, but also like tried to be erased. Maybe there's a little bleed through too. It is, I mean, I would not be transcribing this as anything. During my prompt I was iterating, trying to get a better and better prompt, and I ran this 3 times, and it transcribed the word the first time. It just said illegible, which
Fair.
I think is right. That's how I would prefer that it did it. The second time, it tagged it as unclear, which is good, but it's like continued. Like, surely this word is continued. It's totally... that it's making up, right? This is the first thing I have seen that I would maybe call a hallucination. And then the last time, again, strike through unclear, which is good, and it decides the word is narrative. So, right.
We're not used to computers giving different answers from the same inputs from different runs. But again, this is a large language model, and they do that. Right.
And you can turn down how much variation it does, which I think we have for the most part. But anyhow, this was the most kind of suspicious-y text that I had seen it come up with. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so many of you may have seen some of this material before. We want to revisit this issue of trustworthiness and the kinds of errors and the qualitative nature of those errors in large language model transcriptions or AI transcriptions. So I'm not going to give all the context, but when GPT 4.0, the first easily available multimodal language model came out, a lot of people were excited about using it for transcription. Around that same day, I happened to be transcribing a document on the Library of Virginia's Revolutionary Convention collection on FromThePage, and was working through this document, which I think is fascinating. It's a draft of an objection that the Fincastle County Committee is saying, objecting to the royal governor's treatment. And I'm going to read through it because it's actually pretty important, right? Whereas His Excellency John Earl of, looks like Dunmore, Lieutenant and Governor General of this colony, by withdrawing himself from the seat of government on board one of, and you see they've crossed through, they started writing His Majesty's and they crossed through it, changed it to the King's Ships of War. I think that's just fascinating for people who are trying to figure out their relationship to the King, and they're going from His Majesty to no, he's just the king, right? And then they keep writing, right, under pretense, and they cross that through and then say, by declaring that he will, and they start saying, lay the city of Williamsburg in ashes, and they change that to say, okay, destroy the city of Williamsburg, cross through the in ashes. They come back and start writing, emancipate our slaves, and destroy the countryside. And I say, no, let's do that a little bit differently, and they cross through emancipate our slaves, switch around to lay waste and destroy the countryside, and then add emancipate our slaves, and by their wicked and possible, all this kind of stuff, right? So pretty important document. Interesting, talking about how the American revolutionaries are kind of conceptualizing, this discussion about the role of slavery in the American Revolution. Pretty nice. We ran it through Transcribus, and the thing I like about the Transcribus output, even though it does not do a great job, is that, one, you can tell that this has not been corrected, right? This is obviously produced by a computer and no human has fixed it. Two, you can kind of see, hey, it has words that are kind of like emancipate here. I might want to actually look at the original. We ran the same thing through ChatGPT, and the results we got from ChatGPT are maybe quantitatively identical to Transcribus in terms of character error rate, but they might even be better. But qualitatively, they're pretty problematic because you can't really tell that this hasn't been corrected. It's got all this beautiful markup. It's got, a lot of strikes throughs and things like that. Unless you read it really closely, it kind of makes sense, right? If you're just glancing at it. But it doesn't mention Dunmore or slaves or emancipation at all, right? So this is a tricky kind of poisonous thing to insert into the historical record. So how does Gemini Pro Preview do? So it does the same kind of formatting, does pretty well. So His Excellency John, Earl of Dunmore, then Mere, well, it kind of filled in Dunmore there and connected those. Lieutenant Governor General of this colony by withdrawing himself from the seat of government, board one of his, they got the His Madge, crossed through the King's ships of war, under pretense, declare. So it's not going to be perfect. It actually adds a G at the end of the town Williamsburg, sorry, an H at the end of Williamsburg, which I don't know where that came from. But it's got Dunmore, it's got emancipate, it's got slaves, it's got the things that you would want to try to find this document, right? So it has errors, but the errors are not seductively plausible.
And it captures the important bits,
yes,
right?
Yes, yeah.
Dunmore's there, emancipate's there, slaves are there, right? Yeah. From a historical record point of view, when we ran this, I was very relieved to see this.
Yeah.
So we did some prompt iteration because, go next slide. This is the original prompt that we used, very short, simple, and it worked pretty well. Next slide. So this is one of these Stillwell pages from University of South Dakota where they are hard, right? They're just layout-wise and stuff. And this is what it did, which is fascinating because it really tries to produce a faithful layout to the page. And the page is complicated, right? You can see that, they use tildes for strike throughs. It uses them even on lines that aren't struck through, like that list of art director characteristics. They have strike throughs on all of them, and they are not struck through. So that was a little bit disturbing. It reproduces insertion carets, like on the 4th or 5th line to sell an idea, instead of perhaps indicating insertions, which is what a human would probably do. It draws the box on the bottom right, which I thought was kind of neat, but I don't know whether you'd want to do that or not. So, okay, so that was our first try. I sent this to Anne from University of South Dakota, and right, this is what she said. It's interesting that the AI is going to indent this text or place it in a similar spot. We normally just left justify everything, which we agree. That's kind of what we tend to have transcribers doing from the page. It's interesting it drew a box, has all these tildes. I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with all of these statements. These are all interesting. We don't really have a value judgment on whether they're bad or good, but I'm like, we can fix that. We do this in From the Page all the time. So my next prompt I kept my original and I added a couple of things. So the first change I made, I just said left justify each line. The next thing I said is instead of using kind of a square bracketed unclear, I asked it to actually use a tag, unclear, and then a close tag, unclear. And then the biggest thing I did is I went and I pulled from our help text all the tags that we support in From the Page that people can use for insertions and column breaks and dates and all these things. And I just added them to the bottom of my prompt. So what do we get when we did that? Well, we got this, which is actually very, very similar transcription-wise to the previous example. But you don't want to read markup. I don't want to read markup. We don't want to go to the AI tab and have to read markup.
Yeah, I've heard this described. The TEI community refers to this as the forest of angle brackets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's. It didn't do it wrong, but we have a usability challenge here.
Right. Right. So next prompt. I took out all those tags. I kept the unclear one, but everything else here is the same. So let's go and look at the next one. Okay, so I asked it to left justify. If there were paragraphs, which this text doesn't really have paragraphs, it would have done some extra line breaks between them, but we don't have them. And now we have a wall of text. And this, again, is really hard to read. We aligned it like we asked it to, but I don't know that this is what we want either. So I ended up going back to the original prompt. Next slide. The only thing that's different from the very first one I showed you is this unclear. And this is what we're doing right now. Because I don't know what the right thing is to do, right? And
there's a chance that we may have to change our markup language to
be
handle
more letterpress convention-y or something, or whatever Gemini decides. But I don't want to take directions from a machine. And we've thought about doing other things like projects on From the Page write transcription conventions. We have some defaults, but a lot of people, create their own, which is great. And we're like, well, we could just append those transcription conventions to the end of our prompt, right? Sometimes they're going to be in conflict with our prompt. Like we have some projects that don't do each line as an individual line. They kind of do each paragraph without line breaks, and that's going to be a problem if they're in conflict, right? The other thing is, it feels like the longer these prompts get, the less usable the results are. So I don't know. This is going to be a whole area that we're going to have to start exploring and figuring out what the right thing is. Part of what we want is for, the Gemini results are really impressive, and they're kind of more impressive when it does that layout work. So I don't know. Like, I don't know the right answer here, and that's going to be something new that we're going to have to figure out. Okay, next slide, please. So this is...
our apologies, that is actually a leaf blower behind us.
Oh, no.
There's not anything we can do about that. I'm so sorry.
I thought usually Zoom was great at filtering all that out. Maybe because we still have the music settings? No, probably not.
No, I just looked.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Where are we going? Oh, yeah. So this is where I ended up with that last prompt, which I actually thought was interesting because it didn't use kind of the conventions it used the first time around for strike-throughs or some of the other markup, which was kind of interesting. And the only thing I changed was that unclear tag.
Hey now, Shari and Will.
I'm going to mute everybody. Okay. So that was kind of interesting. I think by inserting a tag, I told it, don't use the conventions you were using. But I didn't give it any other conventions that it ought to be using instead. That's my theory on why this one has kind of less of that textual markup even. Anyhow, so yeah, who knows? Still, an area we're gonna have to do a lot more work in. Okay, next slide. Okay, we run a crowdsourcing platform, right? We're firmly on Team Human. And the question is, well, what does this mean for humans, right? What does this mean for our volunteer transcribers who derive so much meaning and learn so much
and contribute so much. We know that a lot of our public institutions, especially like our state archives, value that interaction with the public so much. And like,
what does this mean? When you have really good transcription from machines, what about the humans? So we sent out when we announced Google this Gemini 3 integration, and most of our transcribers aren't on our newsletter list, but Elaine happens to be, and she responded. And she's like, I'm a longtime transcriber, and I may be wasting my time in continuing.
I'm really discouraged. This is terrible.
And that is scary and terrible, and we're discouraged by reading that, right? And we responded, and we kind of laid out our concerns, both in using AI, and there's also kind of a threat to our livelihood here, right? Both of these concerns. But we also encouraged her to give it a try and to let us know how it worked for her, right? Just try. So 2.5 weeks later, we got another email from Elaine. The highlight at the bottom, I'm going to draw your attention to. I will be very unlikely now to continue devoting time to working on straightforward handwritten documents without an AI draft as a starting point.
She likes it.
2.5 weeks to turn her around. Yay! Her attitude went from, I'm not going to waste my time, I can do this, which I want to expect volunteer time. And I think that is a valid point that she kind of makes, to don't waste my time, give me a starting point.
Yeah.
So that was reassuring, right? Let's look at what Elaine actually did. So she works on a document. Gosh, I didn't write down the institution. This is an archive in the UK, but look at what she's working on. What's amazing is she's not just transcribing using AI draft, she's transcribing account books. Account books are hard, right? They're not really fun to transcribe. And the AI draft gives you the text, but it actually didn't do any of the persnickety markdown needed to turn that text into tables. It did some of it. A short aside here, accounting keeps coming up, right? We're not here to talk about transcribing account books, but like Mark Humphrey's, his very first post, I didn't include in any of this, but when you go read it, it talks a lot about accounting and account books and the reasoning that was happening there. Ben's example earlier, where he was looking at the meeting minutes, it was doing accounting-ish stuff. It was doing math, right? Or what people were being paid and their rates. And so it's interesting to me that I actually think that this may be a major breakthrough on documents like this, which have not been popular, not been easy, but
but are really important.
And they're really interesting if you like numbers and business, and which I do. So that's, I think, fascinating. That historical account books may be one of the areas that benefits the most from this type of AI transcription. But Elaine at the bottom says it's the AI draft that speeds the process and makes it much more interesting.
More interesting is fascinating, right? That is definitely something that we
want.
Yeah, we don't want to replace humans. We want them to be more engaged.
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. So this is another comment Elaine left on a different page, but I'm pleased to be part of the project. And I think, it's AI makes the process much more quicker, more satisfying, but it's only a draft and it's unpredictable. And she talks about where she sees things that are totally wrong in these AI drafts of these account books, right? It even seems to predict the answer, but then it goes and gets it wrong anyway, right? So I think part of Elaine's attitude change is realizing that the AI is not all-knowing. The drafts are good, but her experience still matters, right? And we see that by the mistakes that she calls out. So
yeah, let's talk about what our next steps are. So we talked a little bit about things seeming tentative. We talked about AI being plausible. The next big steps we have are trying to make sure that use of AI is transparent, right? We want to know, was AI used in this transcription? Which AI was used? When was it used? What was the prompt? Were there humans involved? Where did this all come from, right? So to that end, we have a suite of features we are working with right now. They're not currently available, but one of them is making sure that everyone knows when someone used an AI draft to edit a page. To the extent that means that you need to go check up on their work more, let's let everybody know that, right? So we are including this AI draft in people's activity streams, both for their home pages and on the collections. It will also be available in any of the nightly activity emails or activity downloads that project owners see. We also are adding this to the page version listing. So if someone used the AI draft when they were editing a page, we are going to record the fact of that AI intervention, possibly AI pollution, depending on how you say, along with that version of the page and make that available downstream. So that's going to be visible on the page versions tab from the page. And whenever you're looking at a particular version, we're highlighting an AI draft was used here. We also would like to expose the AI draft usage in all of our exports, the ones for which this is possible. I've been discussing this with the TEI community about the right places to include the use of AI in a TEI export. One suggestion is to give it a responsibility statement as if it were another editor. Again, we're kind of going back and forth, especially with these standards communities like IIIF and TEI. It's going to take some discussions before we're able to get this right, because software is written against this API. So making this obvious is a big deal.
So I'm not usually crass talk about commercial things on these webinars, but I am going to do that today. So we're including this for free with our small organization plan and our large organization plan. This is our annual pricing. You can do 50,000 pages for 3,600. You get the Gemini stuff as well as the crowdsourcing and all the metrics and the reasoning and the AI tab, all of that stuff that we're building to make this easier for you to decide and to understand how it plays in your institution. We also have always had, but I'm going to remind everyone that we have a 200-page free trial, and that also includes Gemini 3. There is a checkbox. When you upload material or you import a IIIF manifest, there is a checkbox. You check it. It takes about a minute a page to run the API calls that do this. So you have to be patient, but not that patient. Come back in an hour and your imported documents should have an AI tab on every page. So try it.
Yeah.
Really, try it. Won't hurt. We want to know. We want to see more stuff too.
So we have questions.
And comments.
Yes, comments and apologies for the leaf blower. Hopefully that's over. We have not done any tests. Sarah mentioned we have not done any tests in Spanish. I've heard rumors of good results in Armenian.
And Megan says Cyrillic. Someone used it to do Cyrillic. We support those languages and from the page.
But we have not done tests, and we would love to partner with somebody who's willing to do that kind of evaluation.
Okay, Jeremy commented on the cutoff one where the minutes didn't finish. Is there some hidden max token setting? We are not getting anywhere near any maximum tokens on just a page transcription.
Yeah.
That's not the problem, unfortunately, right?
Yes.
So, go back up to the Williamsburg comment. Oh, Williamsburg in New York.
With the G with an H. I did not know the New York Williamsburg had an H. That's interesting.
That is a autocomplete statistical problem. So.
Or it could be a loop.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we tried poor quality images? Well, I feel like Lord Dunmore is a pretty good example. We have not.
No, LA County. We ran a couple of their digitized microfilm letters. This is
Yeah, they're pretty terrible.
Yeah. It was great. Like that was one of the things I was looking at. It would take us a while to go find it and pull it up to show you, but if you send me an email, I'll send that to you. So, yeah.
John B asks if we ran the same prompt in different conversations on the same text, do we notice differences? Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Well, but it depends on the stuff that was hard, right?
Yes.
So the differences we noticed were on, so one, we are doing API calls more than conversations. It's not a back and forth like you get in the kind of the human interface for any of these LLMs. We are sending everything to an API and getting results back. So it's less contextual. You can do contextual stuff, we're just not choosing to do it. But I would say the places where we saw differences were Lord Dunmore and that manuscript that had that weird, really illegible strike-through thing in the title, Vicissitudes of Life.
Yeah.
And so, okay, here's the deal. Yes, we saw differences. We saw differences in stuff that was really hard to transcribe.
Possibly if we fixed our prompt to encourage it to make fewer guesses.
Or if we asked 3 humans to do the same
Yes.
thing, we might have
Yeah.
the same 3 transcriptions.
Yeah, we're impressed.
Yeah, like it's not that different. And there's Mark Humphreys addresses this in one of his newsletters, if you want to go read through all those too. So
Emily Kane says, more interesting is so fascinating from Elaine. And hi, Elaine, if you're listening to the recording. I know
Yeah.
she said she was gonna try to do that. She'd love to know more about that from her and the other ways AI draft increased her interest. One thing I can say personally is when I deal with account books, I really don't like dealing with tables, right? The formatting stuff, we have the ability to do markdown tables and from the page, but the tables are annoying. The numbers are kind of annoying because, I'm really more interested in the items being bought and sold than I am in the costs. And getting drafts for all that kind of lets me focus on the fun stuff. That's my take.
So again, that's accounting. Yeah, I think this is going to take a while to percolate through, and we do a transcriber email twice a month, and we haven't talked there at all about this. Usually it's just featuring projects to work on, and we don't have a way in our user interface to indicate that, hey, this project has AI, if that's what you prefer. Like when we are find a project page, I think we're going to need to figure out how to start tagging those or showing it next to their titles or something, and to see, do people choose? I mean, I think some people will choose and some people will not choose, and that's fine with me. So yeah, it's early days. So early days, right?
Brett Barney asks, who in the TEI community have we been having these discussions with? So there's an open thread in the help channel in the TEI Slack where we've kind of been bandying this stuff back and forth a little bit. If there are other places that we should go to ask about this, we'd be interested. We're happy to chat about this.
Yeah, the CR and WER of Gemini 3 HDR are impressively low. What about speed and cost, especially compared to Transcribus? Gemini 3 is very cheap.
It is much cheaper than something like Transcribus. One thing it does not provide, and to our knowledge will probably never provide, is the ability to do bounding boxes, right? So Transcribus gives you something like, gives you Alto XML or Page XML that gives you coordinates for every single word, every single line, which means you can do things like highlighting, Control F highlighting. That is something that we don't see coming out of large language models. We're not sure it's even theoretically possible. So that is one clear feature that Transcribus has. We
love Transcribus.
We're shareholders in the Read Co-op. So,
but we have a Transcribus integration, but we've had to pass on our costs on that to the people who choose to use it.
Whereas this we can include in our organizational plans.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense of tokens used per page on average?
I ran those numbers when I was deciding if we could afford to just include this in our subscription. And if you send me an email, I'll copy and paste the math I did on some pages. You have to look at the size of the images, and the images get tiled, and no, it's not easy, and so.
Okay. Josh Kopsky asks whether we've done field-based transcription projects.
Not yet, but soon.
Yeah, we are actually in the middle of an engagement with one archives doing specifically that, right? Testing out Gemini on field-based material, and hopefully we'll have some results to share around April.
We tried indexing pre-printed forms, like you don't transcribe the form text, but the written typed field entries. I think that's pretty much the same question as Josh's. Definitely our approach is so in FromThePage we have field-based transcription already, and Gina knows that because she uses it, but getting data out of the large language model that we can put into our fields for human review is kind of the goal. So, is the goal, yeah.
Ray Abruzzi asks, what do you think this development will do for access and discovery in archives more broadly? Is there a consideration to apply this tech to the thousands of PDFs of handwritten texts from images and photographs taken years ago, which were flat save for some metadata and which can now be brought to life?
Yeah,
Yes.
we think this is important. We think all archives should probably be doing this. And that's why we built it.
Yeah. Question about what TEI is. That's the Text Encoding Initiative.
Yeah, you only need it if you're really, really serious about marking up everything.
I gotta say, I really enjoy reading the TEI guidelines. I'd read that stuff for fun. It's fantastic. Okay, do you want to read this one out?
Yeah, I do think it was Mark Humphrey's, Megan, who talked about setting thinking to low to keep Gemini from overthinking, right? It kind of talks itself out of correct transcription.
Do we know whether, okay, so we have actually done experimentation on the thinking level, high versus low here, specifically trying to address the problems with the text truncation of those meeting minutes. And we didn't find, we were not able to replicate Mark Humphrey's results, right? We found that it had no effect on the transcription output. So more experimentation needs to be done there. I don't know why our results were so different from his, but yeah.
We probably didn't test nearly as many pages as he did,
right.
but maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure what he did on that particular front.
Okay, I'm interested in Gemini's ability to discern spatial formatting and reproduce it accurately. Have we experimented with multi-directional writing, crosshatch letters, upside down writing?
Yes, can we go to my backup slide here?
Okay.
Next one. This one. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm so glad I took this screenshot. I'm like, I can't figure out where it fits, but I love this screenshot. This is from the Civil War and Reconstruction and Governors of Mississippi project. It's a letter, but it has these two newspaper clippings somehow stuck to the top of it. And at first we're like, what is this that it's doing? And it took us a while to figure it out, but it actually transcribes the newspaper clippings that are upside down first before it goes into the letter, and it gets them right, because the text is not that hard, right? But yeah, so I thought that was super interesting. It does it in kind of just, I actually like how this transcription works, kind of the left justified. It didn't try to do the thing it was doing with those Stillwell pages where it's trying to stick stuff on the right and the left and put the little square and all of that sort of stuff. So
are the prompts on which the AI drafts are based visible in the UI? Can they be adapted by the user? Not yet, but we just started recording them for every run. So
and we can change them, like we have, if we run it in the background, we can link to a prompt file. Part of the challenge I'm trying to figure out is like, how do I keep y'all from running 10 bajillion API calls that end up costing us too much money.
Right.
But that's kind of the balance
page,
here,
right? Yes.
Yeah, but like on one page, if you run 10 to make here, I don't know. So like, and a lot of our early thoughts about how do we play in this space is helping you make those decisions by letting you do comparisons.
So the answer there is not yet.
Yeah.
Okay. We actually are at time.
But I think we should keep going, but
Okay.
if you have to drop off, please don't. We won't be offended.
Can other parameters of the Gemini API be tweaked through the FromThePage UI? No, possibly not. Possibly the answer is not yet, but definitely if we have the ability to modify prompts, we might also have the ability to modify things like temperature or thinking levels.
But part of our job is to figure out what works best and to pass it on, so you don't have to make all these hard decisions. You skipped the really important 3 comments here that people are getting Alto XML out of Gemini.
That's interesting. How did I'd be very curious how the bounding boxes worked, because Alto has bounding boxes, and
well, and we have a way to display that as highlighted text over the page.
right.
So yeah, we should talk
Yeah,
like
we
that.
should
We're
do
super
some, yes,
super
yeah.
excited about that. Yeah,
Time for another call with you, Lauren.
yeah.
Okay, Ray Abruzzi will hit term highlighting hold the same relevance when now I can discover documents about my keyword that don't even mention my keyword via AI analysis summary.
Yeah,
summarization.
that is beyond our pay grade here. We're focusing on handwritten text recognition. This is more semantic search, and semantic search is super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, this time last year we thought that is what we'd be building, but now we're doing some. We're back to the text. Okay.
Yeah. So
So if you have a small institution account, can we turn on the feature for existing collections on your dashboard? And if so, how?
we haven't built that piece of the UI yet, but if you send me an email with a link to the collection, I can run it for you. If you have new stuff that you're bringing in, you can. There's a
Check the
checkbox.
box.
But if you need old stuff run, I'm happy to do it. It's just we don't have a way to do it in the user interface
Yeah,
yet.
and we'd actually love to. If you have old stuff, that's great because you've got the ground truth there. So, we'd love to correspond with you about that.
Yeah. Megan points out that Dan Cohen's newsletter, the same one I referenced earlier, has some cross-hatching, which is another one of those kind of visual, spatial sort of interesting things, which is super cool. So keep going. Is that the end? Oh, that's the end. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, Gemini to produce TEI XML. That doesn't surprise me, actually. That's good. Great.
All right. Well, we are over time by a minute.
Oh,
so
not too bad.
Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. This is the first time that we have been optimistic about large language models and transcription.
And go try this out. Go do a FromThePage trial, 200 pages. Just go play. Let's go see how well it works for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And tell us what you find.
This is turned on per page or per document. We have a way to do it on a per page basis in the background, but it doesn't quite make sense. We will send this out we'll send out an email to everyone who signed up with a link to the recording, a link to all the newsletters, a link to the free trial, all of that stuff. So,
All right.
thank you so much for coming.
Thanks everyone for coming.
So much interest. I really appreciate it.